Welcome. So, you're looking to connect your own applications to the power of Agentforce's generative AI? Well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into the Agent API. I'm going to walk you step by step through connecting your systems directly to your AI agents using a simple REST API. Let's get right into it.
All right, our journey today has 6 main parts. We'll start by building that secure gateway, which is our app. Then we'll give it the right permissions and forge our access key. With that key in hand, we'll start a session, have a little chat with our agent, and finally, I'll show you how to troubleshoot common issues and what you can explore next.
Okay, first things first. Any application that wants to talk to the Agent API needs what you can think of as a digital passport. In Agentforce, we call this an external client app. This is the secure, registered entry point for your entire integration.
Now, creating this is actually surprisingly easy. You just head over to the External Client Apps Manager, right in Setup, click New, give your app a name and a contact email, and, this is the most important part, make sure you check that box to enable OAuth. And that's it for the initial creation. Simple, right?
Now, for what is absolutely the most critical part of this whole setup, configuring the permissions. This is where we tell Agentforce exactly what our app is allowed to do and how it's allowed to prove who it is. Getting this next part right is, well, it's key.
To get this right, we need to pick the right authentication method. For this kind of integration, we're going to use the client credentials flow. Why? Because it's designed specifically for server-to-server communication. There's no person logging in here. It's just your system talking directly and securely to the Agent API. It's perfect.
Okay, think of OAuth scopes as visas in that digital passport we talked about. Each one grants a very specific permission, and for the Agent API, you need these 4. Without them, your API calls are going to get denied at the border. So let's break down what each of these really does. So each of these serves a really distinct purpose. The API scope gives you general access. Refresh token is super important for keeping the connection alive without manual logins. And then the last 2, Chatbot API and SFA API, those are the special permissions that actually let us talk directly to our AI agents. Together, they give our app the exact access it needs. No more, no less. This table here lays out the exact settings you need. It's like a cheat sheet. In the left column, you're going to check the boxes to enable the client credentials flow and issue JWT-based tokens. And on the right, you'll uncheck these 3 other options. They're for different flows, and they'll just cause headaches here. So follow this guide exactly, and you'll avoid a ton of configuration problems. We are almost done with the setup, I promise. The final step is to jump into the app's policy tab. In here, you're going to check Enable Client Credentials Flow one more time. And, this is crucial, you'll set the Run As user. This tells Agentforce which user's permissions the agent should run with. Just make sure this is a user who has API access enabled. Okay, with our app all configured, it is time to forge the key that unlocks the API. Now, this isn't a permanent key, It's a short-lived access token that will generate using our app's credentials. To create this token, you're going to need 3 pieces of information. First, your org's My Domain URL. Make sure it's the one that ends in my.salesforce.com. Second and third, you'll need the consumer key and the consumer secret, which you can just copy and paste directly from your external client's app settings.
And here is the magic command. It's just a simple curl post request to the OAuth token endpoint. All you have to do is substitute your My Domain URL, your consumer key, and your consumer secret right into this template. Run it from your terminal, and you are good to go.
If everything was set up right, the API is going to fire back a JSON object, and the prize you're looking for is the value of that access_token property. Copy that big long string, that's your bearer token. It's your temporary key to the kingdom, and you're going to need it for every single API call you make from now on.
All right, we have our app, we have our key. It is time to make first contact. Our goal now is to use that token to kick off a live conversation session with one of our AI agents.
So before you make that first call, you need to get 4 things ready. You need the ID of the specific agent you want to talk to, the access token we just made, your My Domain URL, and finally, a brand new, randomly generated UUID to uniquely identify this one session.
Now pay close attention to this bypass user parameter, because it's a really critical choice. If you set it to true, which is what we're doing here, the agent runs as the user that's assigned to the agent itself.
But if you set it to false, it would run as the user from our app policy. For this specific credentials flow, true is what you want.
And a quick but really important note here. Don't even think about leaving out that random UUID. It's not optional, it is a required parameter. This UUID is how you're going to trace this exact conversation through all the event logs later on, which, trust me, is invaluable for debugging and monitoring.
Here's the command to start the conversation. You'll see we're making a post request to that agent sessions endpoint. We pass our access token in the authorization header, and then we send the agent ID and that session key, our UUID, in the JSON body. When it works, the API will respond with a session ID. Copy that. You're going to need it for every message you send.
Okay, with an active session ID, we can finally start the actual conversation. This part is all about sending messages to the agent, parsing its replies, and then, just as important, ending the session gracefully when we're all done.
So the life cycle of a chat is pretty simple. First, you post to the /messages endpoint using that session ID you just got. Your payload is just a simple JSON with a text property. The agent's going to reply with a more complex JSON, but what you're looking for is nested inside message and then text. Finally, when the conversation is over, you just send a delete request to the session endpoint to close it all out.
Look, even with a perfect setup, sometimes things just go wrong. So let's cover a couple of the most common errors you might run into, and then I'll point you towards some great resources for taking your integration to the next level.
If you see an invalid client error, it almost always means one of two things. Your consumer key is wrong, or your app setup has a mistake in it. Go back and double-check those settings. Now, if you get an invalid grant error about an expired token, don't panic. That's totally normal. Access tokens are designed to be short-lived. You just run that same token generation command from earlier to get a fresh one.
You've now made your first successful API call, but honestly, this is just the beginning of the journey. To go deeper, I really recommend the official docs. You're going to find more advanced examples, a Postman collection that makes testing a breeze, and the full API reference guide for when you're ready to explore every single possibility.
And that is it. You now have all the fundamental pieces to connect your own applications directly to a powerful Agentforce AI agent. So the only question left is, the most exciting one. What are you going to build first?